On a mission given to me by Woody Shaw, Sunship, Dizzy, and John Kahn, dedicated to pursuing a piece of our cultural heritage through interviews with my music heroes, this is The Jake Feinberg Show.
At this time, won't you all join me in a warm welcome for the cadet recording star, Ramsey Lewis.
King Cole put his life on the line playing music. He was an inspiration to many a young pianist who saw the way to communicate musically, to break down all the barriers that people put in their way. Nat King Cole and Oscar Peterson inspired cats like my guest, who grew up in Chicago, which was brimming with the baddest cats around, like Elliott Randall, Richard Evans, Maurice Jennings, Cash McCall, Charles Stepney, and an unlimited amount of young Holt. These cats contributed to my guests' albums, movie soundtracks, and live performances at the Lighthouse or the Jazz Workshop. These melting pot of brethren thrived on commerce-based record labels like Chess Cadet, which fostered African-American roots music like Ahmad Jamal and my guest. It was a month at the London House, growing up with those who were inspired by Monk and Blakey Playing with the late, great Cedar Walton. My guest is an ambassador of music, taking his bands from Bahrain to Tucson. He has lived in the Windy City scene, developing the groove, the feel, keeping the African swing element in the music, developing relationships within the urban community, which fostered the integral parts to melodic invention. My guest has 7 children and 14 grandchildren. His legacy is cemented, and now he will try to pour wisdom and faith into a younger brethren. Just another link in the chain. Ramsey Lewis, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Well, my goodness. What an introduction. Thank you.
Well,
there's only one correction I want to make.
Go ahead.
I have 13 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild.
Okay, so it's 13 grand and then 1 great.
Right.
You know, Ramsey, it's such an honor to talk to you, but before we get into anything, I wanted to ask you, just reflect a little bit on someone we lost. I had an opportunity in this very studio to interview him last fall, but we lost Cedar Walton. And I was wondering about the times that you might have crossed paths with that man and what you remember about him.
Cedar Walton was an unsung hero. All the musicians, all the jazz musicians, knew him, respected him highly. And he was on all, especially piano players, but all the horn players, everybody. But for whatever the reason, the jazz audiences at large weren't aware of all the things that he did and could do. And he was a nice person, sense of humor, sharing. Whenever I met him, he was very friendly.
He seemed to stay in that post-bop pocket. He didn't expand. I mean, because he just didn't want to go. He didn't want to leave that. He just felt that was real swing music.
That was him. I mean, he and Barry Harris, McCoy Tyner. There are those that felt very comfortable in that genre and that style. And if you wanted to hear that kind of music and hear it played really, really, really well, then you would call Cedar Walton and say, "Where are you playing next? I want to check you out."
Ramsey, I wanted to ask you, you're coming here to the Fox Theater to do a Nat King Cole tribute, and I just read a book on Aretha Franklin's father, C.L. Franklin, and you were mentioned in that book as performing in Detroit at a certain period of time with Nat King Cole, and I was wondering if you could talk about to the audience a little bit about what Nat stood for as far as his music, and I mean, in reading this book about C.L. Franklin, he talked about Nat King Cole his life being threatened to get up and play music, And I just thought I couldn't ask anyone better to talk about what a forefather of jazz and swing music that Nat King Cole was in your mind.
Well, when Nat Cole was challenged to take the stage, he was in the South, and not so much in the South, but he was playing to an integrated audience, of both blacks and whites, and there were those in the South in those days that didn't think that black people and white people should be in the same room together. So he was challenged. But Nat Cole meant a lot to jazz musicians, especially myself, to people like Oscar Peterson, to people like Ahmad Jamal and others, Red Garland. I mean, there's just so many people. The list goes on, that were influenced by Nat Cole, who was influenced by Teddy Wilson and Art Tatum. Nat Cole was among the first, with Teddy Wilson, to not play stride in the left hand, to play a chord in the left hand and just play the melody or play the solo in the right hand, and as they say, comp in the left hand. And he did it so well. He was also, his trio, many groups, including Ahmad Jamal and others, imitated the trio he had. So I think without Nat Cole and what he contributed to the evolution of jazz, it surely would have evolved one way or the other, but it wouldn't have had his 2 cents or his nickel, if you will, and it wouldn't have been as healthy as it is today.
Would you say that was he older than you, or were you?
Yeah. Nat was at least 10, 15 years.
So he was
10, 15 years.
Yeah, he was. You would consider him a mentor, not a mentor, but somebody you looked up to.
Yeah, mentor. Because I remember when he played Chicago, and he was with Capitol Records, and I hadn't met him. So maybe he was, at least 10, maybe 15 years. But Daddy O'Daly was the big jazz jockey in Chicago, and he had done things to help our trio, the original Ramsey List trio. And he called us. He says, "Hey, they're having a reception for the release of Nat's new album." I forgot which album it was, Capitol Records, and it's at a hotel, and you guys want to go meet him. And he knew Nat. I think he knew Nat from Chicago, because, Nat and his family lived in Chicago. And we went, and that was the first time that I met Nat Cole, and he was bigger than life to me. I mean, he was, there he stood, after hearing his records, and by then he had some hit records, and so, there's the man himself, and Daddy O'Daly said, "Come over here," and here he is. I shook his hand, and he was quite the gentleman, quite forthcoming and friendly. At that moment, I wanted to drag him off somewhere and say, "How did you do this? And how did you play this?" And, but I didn't embarrass him or me, and I just stood there with my mouth open. And I think one other time I was in some city, and he was performing, and we were staying in the same hotel. And I met him out front. He was waiting for his limo, and so it was just a passing. It was in brief. Hello. And I saw him play here in Chicago at the Palmer House. That's when hotels had these big rooms with entertainment. The Palmer House was a Hilton hotel now, but it was an independent hotel. It had this room that seat 300, 400, 500 people. And Nat Cole, with his trio, backed by a big band, was there, and we went down to see him. I had not met him by then. But I sat there, and once again with my mouth wide open. He sang his hit records, and he went over and played the piano. I don't think there's a jazz musician alive, especially piano players, that in some way has been touched by his music. And most jazz musicians alive are appreciative of what his contribution was.
I know you just got back from Bahrain recently, and I wanted to know, you've seen it all. You saw the Chicago scene develop before your very eyes, and now you're going to other parts of the world that are kind of commercially developed, but do you feel like one of the things that you want to do is bring some of the history of the music to these places?
Well, what amazes me is I can't forget the first time I played Japan, which now, my goodness, it was back in 1966, 67. And the fans came backstage, and they had albums, and they had read liner notes, they had read history books, and they knew so much about the music. And, of course, jazz musicians started going to Europe and the Far East, Europe first, many, many years ago, because there were this thing about Jim Crow was in some cities in the United States, and there were jazz musicians who said, I'm just not going to put up with it. And so that spread the word. And not only did it spread the word, but then there were a lot of European musicians who started learning the music and made their contribution. Now you go to Europe, and there are European musicians, all over the continent and the UK and Japan, the Far East, that play the music. They have their own style and their own. Not that it's that different. You can tell that they have evolved from the same thread, if you will, of music that we have. But as far as music is dearly loved outside the United States.
And so when you went to Bahrain, because the Japanese are out of their minds. They literally bring promo albums to Mickey Roker and people like that. And Mickey never even saw copies of the stuff, and yet right. It's like they're fanatical. But in Bahrain, did you see that kind of, were people coming up to you with albums, same kind of thing?
Yeah, well, Bahrain, we didn't see that kind of thing because we weren't in town that long.
Mm-hmm.
We did spend a few days sightseeing, but they didn't know quite where we were going. But what I did see in Bahrain was we sold out 2 houses. Each house would hold almost 5,000 people. And not only did we sell out the houses, but they recognized the tunes, and they wanted encore after encore after encore, and it was enthusiastic. It wasn't polite applause. It was applause as if they knew what we were doing, and they appreciated what we were doing. So it surprised me because Bahrain, it's only about a half hour's drive from Saudi Arabia, so there we are smack dab in the Middle East.
I love it. I absolutely. To me, I'm thinking to myself, Ramsey is it's just solid ivory, and it's gone on for decades. And it's just to me, it's really inspirational stuff. The Chess Cadet label, you had Howlin' Wolf, and you had Muddy Waters, and you had a huge blues contingent. But I wanted you to tell the audience how you walked into the opportunity at Chess Cadet.
Well, Leonard Chess and Phil Chess, actually they were in the stationery business and quite successful. They had a little shop, where they sold stationery and paperwork, et cetera, et cetera. But it was in the middle of the south side of Chicago. And being in the middle of the south side of Chicago, coming and going to work and people coming in and outside the shop, they noticed a lot of talent, a lot of music, and they decided they would try their hand. And where their shop was, most of the music was blues, and that's how they, Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters. I think Muddy Waters might have been one of the first, not the first, musician that they recorded, and they were successful. Sonny Boy Williams, Little Walter, and it got to the point where they felt the black experience was underserved. So they said, well, why don't we, to each other, why don't we do some jazz? And I think the first jazz musician they really got behind was Ahmad Jamal, but they did release some masters by Sonny Stitt and the masters by Gene Ammons, and then finally, after Ahmad Jamal's new record at the Pershing became such a big smash, they gave us a call and said, do you guys want to sign with us and see what we can do? But they were a small independent label that made a major contribution, along with the VJ label, which no longer exists. But at the time, Atlantic Records was not big as it is now. It had not gone pop. It too was a label that had primarily African American artists that sang blues, R&B, and jazz. So the Chess people, we were firmly into the music, and when they gave us our opportunity, they stuck with us because we had recorded 16 albums. Fortunately, each album sold a little more than the last album, and so we would always renew every 3-4 years, whatever it was. We renew and sign a new contract. Finally, we got to the 17th album, and we stuck to our guns and said, let's record this song, let's record that song. And the last 3 or 4 albums, we had the habit of saying, let's put something on there that is sort of fun. People can dance to,
sure,
or pop their fingers or shake their hips, whatever. I think it was somebody said, Dobie Gray's the In Crowd. I hadn't heard that, but LD and Red had heard it. I listened to the record. I said, it's nice melody. We can do that. And we did that on the album. And what's interesting is the Bohemian Caverns in Washington, D.C., where we recorded that album live, was the bastion of hard bop. Johnny Griffin, Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, John Coltrane. I mean, those are the kind of groups now. They booked us in there. I don't know how anyway, they did. And because of the name of the place and because of who had been playing there, that's why we said we should make a record here. This is historical. And so it was quite surprising that during the recording of that album, the audience got so involved emotionally and verbally, and to the point where towards the end of the set, Red Holt, the drummer, said, "Hey, we ought to play that new song by Dobie Gray." I said, "All right, the In Crowd." And we started playing it, and they started clapping their hands and dancing in the aisle, and we looked at each other like, "What is this?" It was just a wonderful thing. And even at that, when we put the album out, we didn't realize that would be the one that people would like and buy. And of course, they did to the hundreds of thousands.
Well, yeah, and luckily on the Jake Feinberg show, we cover everything that is never talked about. So, Ramsey, I got a piece of music I wanted to play for you, and we'll come back and talk about it.
All right. I don't remember the last time I heard that track.
Now, do you know the name of it?
No.
Opus number 5.
Really?
On Another Voyage. And,
wow.
Yeah, and I want to tell you, man. Well, we could just keep playing the whole song and the whole album. It has a guy that there's 2 guys that I have been on this journey with me. I feel them very strongly, and one of them is Cleveland Eaton,
right?
And then the other one is Maurice White, who obviously is still with us. And then of course on this album he wasn't on that track, but the great Phil Upchurch, who I've interviewed, was on there. But this, to me, when I saw this album, if you got it, flaunt it, part 1, part 2, Uhuru, Uhuru, which means freedom in Swahili. And then the whole album is, but I mean, to me, that was just like, I can't stop listening to that track. And I continue to play it for my daughters too. It's just so beautiful. There's a takeoff, there's a landing, and then there's this, you just bring it up to this pendulum, this peak. I love Cleveland Eaton so much. I wish I could see guys like that play music with you now. To me, it's like, it was so rock solid, and I don't feel that same foundation today. And again, I was born in 1978, but I really love that piece of music, Opus Number 5, and I would just love.
Yeah, as that was playing, I was listening to I knew it was Maurice White and Cleve. I didn't know the name of the piece, but what they were playing was just beautiful, and
that's
Maurice
what I'm. Yeah.
Maurice is just outstanding as a drummer. I mean, he was just outstanding. The stuff he was doing right there on that particular song, what Maurice was playing behind me, with me, I should say. And then as he broke it down, as I broke it down, and we did it all together, I mean, those were fun days.
I think,
of course, Cleveland went on he moved back home to Alabama, and he's teaching school, as I heard. I don't know if he's retired by now. And everybody knows about Maurice White and Earth, Wind and Fire.
Are you? You got to stop me here because I'm going to have a heart attack. Are you saying that Cleveland is still with us? It's okay. It's not. I'll have to do that work. But Ramsey.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do that work too because I didn't get any signals from anywhere in newspapers or friends. Cleveland and I we didn't, stay in touch after so many years. But so you feel that he's not with us?
Well, God, Ramsey, it's so funny as on this journey, I realized that it's like relationships, you don't stay in contact with all the guys, once you might collaborate with them and play ridiculously hot music,
right?
But then it moves on. And so
yeah, right.
I can't say that there's any reason why you should know that. And I feel like I vetted that, but I'm going to have to go back to it. The thing is, Maurice White, he was from Beale Street. He was from Memphis. Is that right?
Maurice White was from Memphis, Tennessee.
He grew up with Booker T. Jones, and then how did you guys meet?
Well, Leonard and Phil Chess began their in a stationery store, but then they made so much money, they bought a building, and they moved into this building. In this building, they had their own studios, and they felt that they could save money if they had a backup band to play for many of their artists rather than to hire musicians every time they wanted. So they hired a rhythm section, and the rhythm section consists of Maurice White as the drummer. And then when they signed me to come to my trio, the original trio, we would have occasion to go down to see Leonard and Phil or about whatever, going down to see them. Sometimes just to stop by and say hello.
Mm-hmm.
And Maurice would be there. And, not in Phil's office or Leonard's office, but upstairs in the studios, because we'd always go upstairs to see who was there. And Maurice was very soft-spoken. Oh, hi, Ramsey. And he would, he said, so you guys are out on the road, right? I said, yeah. He says, how is it? I said, it's wonderful. He says, you have a manager, huh? He said, what do managers do? And he had questions like that. And he said, so what does an agent do? Well, what? And he always had these questions. I mean, if I ran into him once, I ran into him 10 times before I had reason to hire him to come play with my trio. And after he got with my group, he still was asking little questions, not so much now. But the day came when he said, Ramsey, I'm gonna form my own group. And, I thought he was going to form a jazz trio because with me, he had been playing jazz festivals, jazz clubs, jazz concerts, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, oh, so you're going to have a trio? Oh, no, it's going to be a club. No, it's going to be a group bigger than a trio or a quintet. And this is when he got me. He says, we're going to do magic, we're going to do dance, and we're going to do R&B, pop, and jazz. And that's when I said, you need to take a couple aspirin, go home and sleep it off.
You're out of your mind.
3 years later, Maurice, in his quiet way, many people don't know that Maurice is really, really a quiet, humble guy. But in his quiet way, hey, Ramsey, in about 3 months, I'm going to move to the West Coast, so I thought I'd let you know. And he did, and of course, what do they say? The rest is history. He moved, and the name of the group at first was oh God, I forgot the name of the first group. But it wasn't Earth, Wind, and Fire. The Salty Peppers.
The Salty Peppers.
Was the Salty Peppers on Warner Brothers.
And did they actually ever cut an album as that name?
Yeah. They did.
I
I remember they cut some records. I don't know if it became an album or not, but yeah, there were records out by the Salty Peppers, and it was Maurice and not the guys. I think it was Maurice and one or two of his brothers, but there were other guys in the Salty Peppers. And then he reformed the band. That's when he got Philip Bailey and the keyboard player Larry Dunn. Got those guys, and they called them Earth, Wind, and Fire. Well, you know the rest of that.
And then you actually had a chance to collaborate with that band on an album. Is that right?
Yeah. I was in the studio and recording an album here in Chicago, and we had in the middle of the recording date, we had already had a contract to a concert to play in Washington, just one night. So we took a couple nights off to go to Washington to play that concert. And when I'm in Washington, I get a phone call from Maurice. He's in New York, and he just did a concert with Sly and the Family Stone. And he was all excited. He was saying, we kicked their ass. I mean, he's bragging. And I know he did. At Madison Square Garden, no less. And so he said, "What are you doing?" So I told him what was up, and he said, "Oh, I got a tune for you, and I think it can be bigger than the in crowd." I said, "Whoa, really?" And he said, "Yeah." He says, So I said, "Well, I'm in the studio right now. In fact, we leave here, we're going back to Chicago tomorrow, next day, and we're going to finish recording." He says, "Well, some of us, me, Philip, and he named a couple other guys. If you want, we can stop in Chicago and show you this tune." And maybe even play on it if you'd like us to. I said, yeah, that'd be great. So they met us in Chicago, and we worked about 3 days on this tune. And I said, okay, what are you going to call it? And it was called Hot Dog It. I said, all right, this is my hit tune. He said, it's going to be bigger than any crowd. But before he left the studio, he says, oh, man, I got this melody that's in my head. Me and this other guy kind of messing around with it. And we want to see what can be done with it. Maybe no more than just state the melody, and a couple guys, you and Donald Myrick, take solos. Because, you already got your hit, Dog It, and just have fun with this. So we stated the melody, and then Donald Myrick took a solo, I took a solo, and then we went back and stated the melody, and that was over. And then he said, I still need something. It needs voices. Now, at this point in his life, everything needed voices. Once he started Earth, Wind, and Fire, voices were like in his head. He says, but I don't have any lyrics. So I said, well, I can't help you with that. So he said, I tell you what, we'll just say way-o, way-o, way-o. We'll take care of it. So they turned the tape on, and he and Philip and I forgot the other word, the Fire guy. And it's way-o, way-o. And we put the single out, Hot Dog It. Radio played it for 2-3 weeks, and radio jumped off of it. But the album is selling. So they called the stores and said, what's up? The people are coming in the stores asking for the album that has Sun Goddess on it.
Uh-huh.
Sun Goddess the album started selling like a single 45 record. I mean, albums in those days were $3.98. Singles were 98 cents.
Oh, get me back there. Get me back.
and so they put the Sun Goddess out as a single. On the album, it was 7-8 minutes. The single, they cut it down to 3 or 4 minutes. People didn't want 3 or 4 minutes. They're still going in. We want the album. I mean, it was just a big deal. And once again, the rest is history.
The Wayo vocals, was that part of Sun God? I mean, how did that tie into?
Yeah. He's through. We're through with the record, and Maurice wanted some vocals on it. He didn't have any words, and so he says, "Well, we'll just make up some, and we'll just say Wayo, 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 Bop, Way." He just ba ba da ba 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 ba. Yeah, I can't sing.
You know,
he wouldn't let me.
This is the thing. I when we opened the show, there was a broadcaster, and then you went into a little bit of. We just heard a little bit of the song, but that was off an album. And I got to tell you, I'll send you this vinyl if you don't have it. It's Solid Ivory, which came out in '74. Ramsey Lewis on Cadet, and What Now, My Love, and this is a mix of live shows, some from the Lighthouse, some from the workshop, and actually a live session that was absolutely rowdy at the Chess Recording Studios in Chicago. And it's a mixture of Red Holt and Young, and then Cleve and Maurice, and then this sort of unknown, unheralded, another unsung cat, Elliott Randall on guitar. But I wanted to ask you, how do you feel when you go around now? So many of your albums, a lot of them, are live. Like we just talked about the In Crowd, and now I'm looking at Solid Ivory, and I look at jazz. I know jazz is a music that needs to be played live. We talked about Cedar Walton. He said the same thing. I mean, there's a visceral, it's all feel. And now that you don't have, does it concern you that because of the shrinking amount of venues, like there's no way for Ramsey Lewis to play a week at the both end anymore. There's just no way there's just not enough venues to see live jazz, which is the kind of form that music needs to be seen in. How do you feel we're going to work ourselves into the future so that this street music can stay alive?
Well, now that's a long story, and one of the problems with this music is, there's so many ways to look at it. The jazz musician back in the 50s, 40s wanted more respect. We were playing in nightclubs and the 30s, 40s, 50s, and so they wanted to play Carnegie Hall, Orchestra Hall, and all the concert halls. And 50% or more, I'd say more, maybe 80, 90% of our jazz audience back in those days were hardworking, everyday people. And jazz was, not that they understood it or did understand it, they liked the feel of it. They liked the sound of the melody. They danced to jazz. I mean, it was just their form of entertainment. They worked hard during the week, and they, come on, honey, we're gonna go dancing, or come on, honey, we're gonna go to this club and have a bite to eat and listen to some jazz. And they understood it, But the jazz musician said, we don't want to play clubs, smoky clubs. We want to be like the classical musicians. They don't play smoky clubs. We want to play the concert halls. Well, not only did some of us move to concert halls, but some of us felt that we now had to experiment more and get a little more intricate with our music. And so those people who were just everyday people working steel mills and whatever, secretaries, vice presidents, whatever, they got to the point where they said, I don't know what they're playing up there. I have no idea what they're playing. Whereas the jazz musician felt that he or she was progressing and playing this music that they always wanted to play, and now that they're in Carnegie Hall and they're Vladimir Horowitz and they just played there last week, and the symphony orchestra played the week before that, and now I'm here. I can play this other thing that's been in my head. And too many people said, this is not what I heard at Birdland. This is not what I heard at the Village Vanguard in New York. This is not what I heard at the Blue Note in Chicago. This is not what I heard at Howard Ramsey's at the Lighthouse when you and I, we were just sitting there having a bite to eat and patting our... I mean, people used to, move from side to side and bob and weave with the music and clap their hands, pop their fingers, and tap their toes. And you'd play songs from the Great American Songbook, Irving Berlin, Duke Ellington, Cole Porter. And you'd throw in some originals, but you knew that you still had to stay in the viewpoint or stay in the eyesight, the musical eyesight of these people. I mean, this is not college course 404 with music students that knew Bela Bartok and bar, and you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? So you got to keep who's our audience? Hello, who's our audience today?
I know.
Now, when somebody says, "I want you to come to University of Illinois or wherever, or Juilliard, and I want you to play for some jazz or some whatever," then you can play whatever. But when you're playing for, so we lost. My whole point here, and I don't want to belabor this, is that we lost people because they couldn't dance to the music anymore. Okay, and then we lost people because they know zilch about avant-garde music, zilch about taking music outside, zilch about music that didn't swing, zilch about music that didn't have some element of the blues in it. So they started saying, well, we'll do other things. And that all happened. We started losing people long before the record business started going down the tubes.
I agree. You're making you're making so many and it's so great because you lived through it. And I wonder, this is another question. It's like you're on so many boards of trustees and you're on these panels, and I mean, how much of this? Literally, I sometimes interview like other horn players like Lou Tabakin or really accomplished guys, and they're like, certain festivals they'll talk to people about coming down, and they're like, well, we require a master's degree in music, and it's like,
yeah.
What was it? The street scholar mentality is that's the blues, that's the swing, and if it's too polished, then nobody's going to be patting their foot to it. You know what I'm trying to say? Right?
Exactly.
And so that's, do you, like in this Nat King Cole tribute, I mean, it's kind of a unique situation. You guys are, it's not like a piano, bass, drums trio, but do you still try to make it a point to open it up as much as you can, even in a concert hall, it's where it's much more based on like a performance as opposed to just having a bite to eat and relaxing after a long week and just getting down.
But even in concert halls, I like to reach out and touch. Mm-hmm. Now, I came from playing classical music 4 years old, still play classical music. At 9 years old, my dad said, you're going to start playing for the church, specifically the church choir, the gospel choir. And when you're playing gospel music in African-American churches, you got to learn to reach out and touch, or you get fired, So connecting with the audience has always been in the back of my mind when I go out to play. That, I don't want to dumb down, as they say, or play down to an audience, but there's enough music in my being, and there's enough music out there where I can put together a set list. And it's funny, backstage the guy says, you're doing a set list, and our road manager says, yeah, you guys want to take a look at it? And he says, well, we'll look at the first tune, but he never sticks with it after that anyway. That's because after the first couple tunes, I can tell, do I have an audience that is a little more blues-oriented? Do I have an audience that's a little more, what kind of audience do I have? And staying in my own bag, I can pretty much grab an audience after the first couple tunes. Of course, when I get to the hit records towards the end of the show, enough said. But the first part of the show, it's a challenge to me that I accept and have fun with, that I engage the audience. And when the audience walks out of the auditorium and they're saying, what a great show we put on, they don't know that they were a large part of it, that it was a give and take. That as I play songs and I notice the way they respond during the song, I notice the way they respond after the song, that sends me in certain directions. And it's a love affair.
Oh, Ramsey, I've talked to so many guys you might have jammed with or played with. I mean, really unsung cats from Omaha and from Louisiana. They come out to the West Coast. So many jazzers have scrapped and clawed for everything and try to earn everything. Some of them never receive credits for the stuff they did. And I'm like, I think you're the first musician, really, that I've interviewed that spent their entire life in one city, pretty much. And and then I look at it and I say, you know what? He had 3 or 4 iconic rhythm sections that stayed with you for certain years at a time. And that stability is so unlike the jazz life that I've been chronicling. And I'm wondering if that ever dawned on you as well, because, I mean, you really have never left Chicago. I mean, is that right? Your family's still there.
Yeah, my family's here, and I've lived here. I only leave here to go to the airport and come back.
I mean,
I think that's because, playing Chicago, I started playing when I was 15, 16 years old on weekends with this dance band. That's when they were dancing to jazz, and then we would play nightclubs, and some of these nightclubs they would dance. Some people would sit down and listen. And then the 7-piece band broke up, and our trio was left with L.D. Young, Red Holt, and we played around Chicago. And so when we started making records, Chicago stepped right up and started buying our records, and we played places here in Chicago at least 2-3 times a year. And to this day, Chicago supports me, and I appreciate that. So would I leave a place? I mean, it's like leaving a home that's warm and comfortable and has 3 square meals a day and a nice bed to sleep in.
a lot of kids and grandkids.
A lot of kids running around, and so Chicago has been good to me, and so I really appreciate it.
One final question for you, Ramsey, and thanks so much. It's such an honor to talk to you. But at this point in your life, what are your priorities when you go on a tour like this, or any tour, or what are the things that you want to convey? Like you said, it's so interesting. You said most of the time the audience has no idea how much of an impact they have on the set that I play. But what are the things that are most important musically that you want to convey in this part of your career?
Well, in 2007, Wells Kaufman, the CEO of the Ravinia Festival, that's not unlike Wolf Trap and other outdoor summer, it's the summer home of Chicago Symphony Orchestra. He said, Ramsey, I want you to write something to perform for about an hour with the Joffrey Ballet. They'll choreograph it and you'll write it. I had never written long-form works. I'd written songs to go on an album, a song here, a song there, which are 3-4 minutes. And this had enough music to be 45 minutes to an hour. Widely received, and it floored me. The next year, or 2 years later, Abraham Lincoln's the celebration of his 200th anniversary. He was born in Illinois. It was a huge thing. And now this is the whole evening. Ramsey, I want you to write something to be performed with a band, 21-piece band. We could have had as big a band as we wanted, but that's what we decided for the whole evening. So that went so well that the Kennedy Center heard about it and said, we want you to come and perform that with us. And so I got into this composing thing, and that's kind of where I am now, that performing and composing. And I have a lovely wife, and of course the kids and the grandkids. Life is good.
And listen, I'm going to let you know. I'm going to do some research on Cleve, because if he's still around, we got to find him, man.
Yeah, I'd like to know. Please let me know.
And are you still on the radio at all, or no?
No radio. Well, there's talk about television again.
Yeah, we need the freeform radio. We need the Earth, Wind, and Fire next to Everybody's Groove into.
I know. It was so much fun. Fun.
Well, listen, I look forward to meeting you. I hope I get a chance to see you down here in Tucson, and best of luck on the tour, and we'll be in touch.
Great talking with you.
All right, brother.
Bye-bye.
Bye. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. We'll see you all in a little bit.